This video is about setting up portfolio management offices, and it's just a few minutes to give you a little bit of background of some of the stories and the anecdotes and the experiences that I've been having when I've been setting up PMOs recently for some of our clients. Key thing I want to talk about is what I think the essence of an effective portfolio management office is. I know that we have the P30 guidance, but this is very much from the coalface where I'm working at the moment. I'm setting up one for a large international law firm. It's been going on for months because it's been quite a slow burn. But now that we've got approval to actually have a portfolio management office, the first thing that we've found, you'd think that we'd be talking about sort of a project management approach and that sort of thing, but the first thing that we found that is absolutely vital and that they must have is an actual roadmap of current, interim and future infrastructure, if you like, the whole setup of their organisation. This might be the IT infrastructure, all the systems that they have, and how all of those fit together. It's also about having a detailed breakdown of all the organisation structures within the organisation itself, and the whole reason that we need this roadmap so incredibly importantly is that the portfolio is all about a collection of projects and changes. And every 3 months or so, what we found is that clearly the sort of the interim deliverable of the organisation, we look like this, version 1, and then after 3 months have gone by, we've emerged and we've become sort of 1 plus a little bit of this, and then as the next 3 months have gone past, we've become sort of part of 1, we've lost bits of 1, we've got a bit of the second week and another bit here. So our actual picture of what our systems look like, what our processes look like, have actually changed. And the whole point about having this roadmap is actually proving to the board each quarter that actually having a portfolio management office is worth it, and that actually they can see in one easy to see picture, one easy to understand picture, what the impact of this giant portfolio is. What we have found has failed miserably is, although the portfolio management office has a giant spreadsheet of every project and change initiative that the organisation is doing, trying to report against that, we're doing RAG reporting, we're prioritising that spreadsheet based on the size and the delivery dates of the benefits, for example. That's actually not getting the message across to the board, which is, and do you know what? Having a portfolio management office means that we've pulled it all together and that there is an oversight that you wouldn't have if we didn't exist. Because frankly, if they didn't exist, then the individual project managers would be pulling in that information that sits in the spreadsheet anyway. They'd be being able to list their own projects, so they still have a projects list. So what's the added value of having a portfolio office? And that added value is really captured by very simple diagrams of how the infrastructure, there is a roadmap from here to, it's going to be right over here, of how things should look in the next 2 to 3 years. And that every quarter the PMO can actually demonstrate the changes that it has made. So I think that is absolutely essential. I did start this by saying that the obvious thing would be that there is a project management method, and in fact what I think is absolutely vital, if the portfolio office is to sort of future-proof its existence and how it guides people to do their work, it's got to be an integrated project and change management life cycle, or model, or whatever you want to call it, method. So it's got to take on board the fact that we get to the point of delivery, but also that we get to the point of implementation and the benefits being realised. So there are steps in that life cycle model that help people actually get through the shock, anger and denial of the transition, and that actually help people to experiment and integrate the deliverables into their way of working. So it's really important that if you have a method, a methodology, that a really good PMO doesn't just sit there and go, oh, we've got a project management method, it's based on Prince 2. Not good enough. You must have a method that takes you all the way from initial idea all the way through to benefits realisation. And that means an integrated project and change management approach. That's really, really important. It's pretty obvious that we also ought to have some kind of reporting framework. And you may very well find that if you're setting up a portfolio management office, that particularly if it's been based in the IT division, that there will be some kind of enterprise software that will pull together an awful lot of the reporting. What we found, and this comes from the results of talking to people at the PMO SIG as well, a lot of the companies that are represented at the PMO SIG would like to make the point that the tail mustn't wag the dog. What they need is that they know that there's an enterprise system out there that will pull together all sorts of project reporting and give them loads and loads of charts, but the really successful ones saying, okay, we know that's out there, but actually we're going to step back and we're going to ask, you know, what questions do we need to answer with our reporting? So they actually start from the perspective of, okay, who are we reporting to? Who really needs to know anything about the portfolio, and what is it that they need to know? And actually a real recognition, a bit like the diagram that's up here, that the board do not want reams and reams of paper and complex reports. Actually, probably what the board want is a well-constructed sort of management dashboard, and that management dashboard has all of the indicators about portfolio sort of success, probably driven by this idea of benefits management being the leading thing. So don't do project progress and start to look at things like how busy people are and how much is going on in the projects, but actually step back and go, yeah, well, we measured our current situation, we've taken some interim measures, and we can show now that there are efficiency improvements, productivity improvements, or whatever. So the really switched on portfolio management offices, the ones that are really good at this, have actually said, we accept that we can relatively easily buy a system of some kind that will do the automated reporting for us. We probably aren't going to rely on pulling together our own spreadsheets, but even though there'll be a standard suite of reports, it is much more important for us to know and agree with our sponsors and stakeholders what questions do we need to answer for them, and then actually give them that information. And so I know a lot of PMOs that are probably getting the reporting out of the systems but not actually sending that out. What they're giving out to their stakeholders is the commentary that explains the report and actually gives them the numbers behind, the explanation of the numbers, and doesn't just give them the numbers. So I think that's really important. Last but not least, I think that a key to the portfolio management office is still a recognition that it may be called portfolio office, but there's still a lot of help that's needed on the ground to make things happen. And so there's a sort of service provision element to it. The service provision is on things like planning, on running things like risk workshops, actually helping people to pull together their risk registers, helping advise them on what the risk responses should be, critical friend or an assurance role that actually goes over key documentation from projects and actually tries to spot ahead of the curve what could go wrong and actually bring the quality of the project and what it's doing up to an agreed standard. So certainly this whole idea of service provision. So it is telling you that a really good portfolio management office will have people within it who have experience in project and program management and who can genuinely help other project and program managers. Now that might sound obvious, but some of the failed PMOs that I've seen that have been quick and dirty establishments have actually been much more about people who are good at collating data and actually pulling together reports, but actually have never really run a project and can't really provide any help. So when the reports are showing that a project is slipping behind or that it's not delivering the quality, they can do very little about it. So just to summarise, I think there are 4 key elements, just trying to bring to life, you know, what's really happening at PMO. That roadmap of the current, the interim states and the future state in a pretty picture, a simplified picture, is what the board need. They don't need giant spreadsheets of all the projects and what's going on. They need to see what the impact is of the portfolio, because that justifies why they should have a portfolio office in the first place. I think that the project and change management lifecycle method is pretty important in terms of making sure it's integrated. That's the key word there. That we don't just therefore have a PMO that's set up based on project management alone. That certainly will not future-proof them. That's not what people are building these days. Remember that there are a lot of organisations out there that are, instead of having project offices, they are setting up change management offices. And it's because actually what they're doing is both the project and the change, because they need to get to the point of benefits realisation. They need to get through that curve effectively. Yeah? From here's the deliverable and this is the transition curve. So that's the project and this is the change life cycle, and actually where they need to get to is this point when the benefits are realised. So you need an integrated method that covers all of those things and not just a project life cycle. You need a reporting framework, yes, you need information to come up from project managers, but you also need something that enables people to understand the meaning of all that reporting. So what questions do you need to answer for your stakeholders? And don't worry about giving them reports necessarily, actually just give them the information that they need in an easily digestible format. But also make sure as part of that reporting framework that it is two-way. It's obvious that PMOs pull information in from the individual projects, but they are reporting up to board level. They have a responsibility to make sure that information about the overall direction and scope of the portfolio goes downwards back to those projects. So it has to be really two-way. And there'll be a lot of dissatisfaction with individual project managers who will only see the portfolio management office as just an overhead and an additional nuisance, is if all the portfolio management office does is pull information out from them but gives them nothing back in return. Finally, there has to be that additional supporting, the service provision for planning skills, risk management skills, reviewing key documentation, looking at the scope of project or programme briefs, looking for duplication, looking for interdependencies. And if you like, the Portfolio Management Office should really understand the ecosystem of all the projects and project managers within the organisation and how they fit together. They have to have that bigger picture. I hope this helps because it just sort of summarises maybe some of the real stuff that's going on in the world at the moment. Thanks.